welcome to Story Edit Now. This is a stream where I edit stories from writers in the community. Whether you have fantasy, a romance, a mystery, a thriller, a short story, a novel, poetry, music, I treat all of it very similarly in terms of storytelling principles and mechanics. Now, what changes from genre to genre or from format to format is the genre conventions or the conventions of the style. For instance, a screenplay versus a novel, there's obviously variances where a novel you get the interiority aspect and a screenplay or a script is much more visual. So if you want feedback on your story, submit now. The link is down in the YouTube description or over in the chat. By the way, welcome to the community. I'm Kauffman, daily writing streamer, editor, and I'm on a mission to help writers and help you with getting your stuff edited, because we know that editing, paying for the cover art, and doing all the things for a book can take so much money. But let's try to make it just a little bit more affordable. So we're going to hop into it right now. All right, so let's do it. So how do you submit? So for those of you who are already familiar with the process, the submission link is down in the YouTube description. All you have to do is click on the link, fill out a couple questions, and include a draft, whether through a Google Docs or through a Word doc, of your piece. Now, right now, I've been asking for no more than 5 pages double spaced. Just so I can make sure I have enough time, I'm going to continue to play around with that format and see what I have time for and what we can actually get through. All right, and perfect. So with that, let's talk for a moment about what is editing and what types of edits are there. So when we think about editing and we think about the different styles and the different structures, I like to break editing down into a couple different there's a couple different styles of editing. Let me pull it up here. All right, so I'll throw this up really quick. I have the different styles listed on my website. So when I think about the different types of editing, I really like to break it up into the 4 different styles. 4 very different styles, and they're just different types of editing. So we have developmental editing. I like to think of developmental, and I think developmental is probably the most well-known of the edits because this is very story-focused. Developmental editing tends to focus on big picture ideas. It's not just story-driven, or it's not just fixing story problems. Developmental editing can also help with clarity, flow, style, and readability. Now, depending on the editor and depending on what the draft needs, sometimes a lot of the edits can cross over. So there's a lot of crossover between the different styles of edits. So, so development, it's like I'm looking at the wrong one here. No, okay, I was like, I knew that was wrong. No, that was line editing. Oh, God. So like I said, developmental editing is big picture. No, it's where it's on story structure, plot progression, character development, world building, pacing, and readability. I'm like, that sounds right. That actually sounds right. So developmental editing is really very much focused on the story, but you can also handle things like style. There's also things like with line editing and with copy editing. Sometimes developmental editing will touch on clarity and style and readability, but the primary focus is making sure that the characters make sense, the story is clear, the world building is actually believable, and you're not having like things that are repetitive or things that detract from the core story. And then line editing is a much more sentence by sentence level edit, where the line edit is much more focused on helping the writer, helping the author improve their overall style and pacing of the story. Line editing tends to work very well if either you're a newer writer or you feel like you have a lot of sentence. Maybe you're the type, you have a lot of grammatical problems. You're like, okay, I know I have a lot of grammatical issues. I know I have a lot of style issues. I feel like my writing, I want it to pop more, but it just doesn't feel like it's there. Line editing is really good if you feel like there's probably a lot of paragraph problems. Line editing really helps with improving your style. I really like to think as line editing as the style improvement, developmental editing as the story improvement, and then we get into copy editing, which is really more the grammar improvement. So if I was to make it as easy as possible, story for developmental, style for line editing, and then grammar for copy editing. Now, of course, they each do different things, absolutely, but we're just going to break it down like that just to make it a little bit easier. And then, of course, proofreading is the last stage. I like to think of proofreading as like a final pass through. Proofreading is really about that the manuscript has already gone through multiple revisions. It's already gone through multiple edits. It's already gone through multiple pass-throughs. And the goal of it is really to catch typos, mistakes, errors, and inconsistencies. This will generally fix formatting things. Generally, with proofreads, the amount of errors you should be seeing per page are very minimal. Like, you want to think of proofreading as like a final step, and I highly recommend every manuscript should go through a proofread. Whether you're paying an editor or you're doing it yourself, every manuscript needs to go through a final proofread. And the goal is to minimize your mistakes. Now, of course, if a reader is reading your book and there's mistakes in it, they're going to forgive you every once in a while. But if they're reading the book and there's they catch a grammar mistake or a typo or a formatting thing, every page, it's going to pull them out of the story. And it's going to make them think this author is inexperienced. They do not know how to tell a story. They can't even fix common grammar issues. Even though we know, right, as authors and writers, we know if you're writing 100,000 word page or word book, yeah, it's kind of hard to go through every single word in it. But the reader, if they're not a writer, they're not going to think about that. They're just like, oh, they can't catch common grammar problems. So that's the 4 types of editing that I like to break up or that I like to think through. So I'm sure I will create a cute graphic at some point. So let's get into the editing. All right. So our first one on deck, and I think this one feels very, very appropriate. So I'm going to be queuing off the top of our very first editing. The first editing victim will be Calvin. So we will be editing Storm 2, which is a military sci-fi. And Calvin, I think when I think back to the story and critique stream, I think you were one of our very first writers that I did a critique for. So it feels very appropriate that I'm kicking this off with editing as well. So we're definitely going to see what we can get into, and I'm very, very excited. All right, so let me pull up Calvin's. Give me just a moment. Well, I'm queuing that up. I saw you guys answer some of my questions. Let's see. It sounds like you guys are making good progress. Whiteseer, you said you're only 2 chapters from reaching the halfway point. Calvin, about 5 chapters from the end. Right now, they're fighting for the capital city of Tyre. Ooh, so exciting. You guys are at really, really great points. Emily, you're in the beginning of the first draft of your mystery romance novel, also in the beginning of first draft of the fantasy novel. Ooh, so you're in the beginning of 2 first drafts, which is epic. Awesome. Thanks so much for submitting, Rachel. Really appreciate that. All right. And let's see. Kara, welcome. Good to see you here. Okay. So let's do it. All right. So I'm going to pull this up here. Give me just a moment. So when I ask myself this, once again, this is going to be a bit of a learning experience. So we're going to be picking and trying and figuring out what works. So with the critique show, usually I do a live reading of it first, but since we're editing, I'm not going to focus on doing it as a live reading because we want to focus on editing and getting it edited down and fixed ASAP. So what we're going to do is we're going to hop straight into the manuscript, and we're going to see what issues we can see. Now, if you're watching in the chat, whether you're here on the live stream or you're on the replay, if there's things that you see, definitely feel free to drop a comment. Be like, hey, you know what? That doesn't make sense, or maybe that could be improved. Because once again, our goal is to improve at seeing how we can fix things and how we can revise things. Now, if there's something that I do or that I edit and you're like, why does he do that? Or maybe you want to know more about a specific type of edit, definitely feel free to ask questions. Absolutely ask questions. My goal of this is to help you become a better writer, so that way when you are revising your stories, you will be able to catch more of your own inconsistencies, more of your own problems. So then when you submit it to an editor, you'll be able to submit your drafts with smaller word counts, which are going to save you money. 9 times out of 10, as writers, we like to write too much. So let's get into it. First thing that we have to decide is we're going to have to determine what type of edit this needs. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through, let's see, we're going to treat it on a page by page level. I'm going to read through the first page and then ask myself how it sounds. All right, so let's see. So we got Storm 2. This is a military sci-fi. Chapter 1, Planet Earth. Location, Paris, France. Date, December 21st. I'm going to assume this is 22nd. Well, here's one thing. 22nd. I guess I should probably put into suggestion mode. I'll see if I like doing suggestion mode. I mean, I probably should, so you guys can see the actual edits I'm doing. Date, let's go that. All right, 22nd, 22:58, time 1000 local time. Horatio waited impatiently in the marble hall of the Senate Rotunda at the capital of the HIO. It was just 2 weeks ago that the disaster at Tyrus had occurred, and he'd been recalled back to answer for it. Although on the outside he displayed a brash arrogance with his chest puffed out as he waited to be called, inside he was panicking. Although he knew he didn't do anything wrong, the Joint Chiefs were not happy with him. While the ground battle had fallen on Bradley, who already had his own meeting with them, the space battle fell on his shoulders. In Horatio's mind, none of it was his fault. The ambushing of the fleet or the events that followed leading up to the explosion on the surface. Okay, so developmentally, this is actually a strong open. I don't have any issues story-wise so far. Definitely a little bit more of a line edit. We have a couple of sentences that are running on just a little bit. I wouldn't say it's horrible. I'm not upset about this first chapter or this first page so far. I can tell Kevin's probably gone through it a couple times before. So let's see what we see. Horatio waited impatiently in the marble hall of the Senate Rotunda. Interesting. Graham really wants me to capitalize it. Thinks it's a place. It's debatable. And then once again, with things like Grammarly, guys, they're tools. Sometimes they give good suggestions. Sometimes it really sucks. Like, I think as a writer, if you rely on things like Grammarly, I think it's definitely a good tool to help you, but you don't want to rely on it 100% of the time, because sometimes it offers recommendations that just like are not the vibe. Sometimes it offers recommendations that are not a good recommendation. So like, I think combining tools like Grammarly with skill and with knowledge and with research is definitely the way to go. But if you have no knowledge whatsoever and you're like, hey, but I need it to sound better, things like Grammarly is a good helpful tool. Let's see. At the capital of the HIO. Hey, what's up, JL? I saw you hop into the stream. Welcome. JL is also another excellent writer with a lot of editing insight. JL, absolutely. If you have any recommendations, you're always more than welcome to drop a comment. JL also has another really, really fine eye for editing and for improving storytelling. Okay, so let's see. Horatio waited impatiently in the marble hall of the Senate Rotunda at the capital of the HIO. Kind of going back and forth on if I want this capitalized or not. The Senate Rotunda. I don't think so because it's saying that's the Senate. I'm gonna leave this for now. I'll think about it. Just gonna highlight that. At the capital of the HIO. Now we are on chapter 1 of book 2. So technically, if the reader has read book 1, they should know what the HIO is. But the question that I posed to Calvin, and this is a question that I pose to all of you, if you're working on a later book in your story, if you're working on book 2, 3, 4, 5, the question you need to ask yourself is, do you want each book to be able to be readable without having to read the other ones? If that question is yes, then when you introduce terminology or you introduce things, you have to give some type of setup or some type of just like initial brief description so that way new readers can get into the story. If you're like, hey, readers have to read book 1, a little bit of a non-issue. So just something to keep in mind. Now I know I've spoken, Calvin, with you before. I think you had talked about doing a glossary of sorts. Needs to be readable without reading. Yeah, so I think what I would do, Calvin, is in book 2, I would have a glossary as well, because I know you use a lot of terms, a lot of science fiction, or a lot of terms for your world that readers just might not know. I've seen it done a couple ways. Sometimes writers will write like what it means in parentheses. I go back and forth on this because it clutters the text. Sometimes I'll see writers kind of like a dictionary will do little meetings at the bottom of the page in the footnotes. Kind of go back and forth on that. Makes it feel a little bit more of a dictionary, and I kind of go back. I kind of like the glossary the most, I think, but that's just that's personal preference. I would ask readers and see what readers' expectations are. Let's see. It was just 2 weeks ago that the disaster at Tyrus had occurred, and he'd been recalled back to answer for it. Yeah, because we have 2 separate ones there. Although on the outside, he displayed a brash arrogance with his chest puffed out as he waited to be called. Although on the outside. Alright, so we have a bit of a run on here. Although on the outside he displayed a brash arrogance. Let's go. Alright, I am not going to like that at all. That's going to bug me. On the outside, now we can go comma. On the outside, he displayed a brash arrogance with his chest puffed out. On the outside, he displayed a brash arrogance. I wonder if I can go here. On the outside. I don't like that. On the outside, he displayed a brash arrogance with his chest puffed out as he waited to be called. On the outside, he displayed a brash arrogance with his chest puffed out as he waited to be called. Yeah, let's see, and I can tell in the comments you guys are definitely thinking of capitalizing it. And I think that was the question of if it was a proper place or not. So let's capitalize that. Good call, JL. Okay. Disaster Tarzan. On the outside, he displayed a brash arrogance with his chest puffed out as he waited to be called. I don't like the wording of this bugs me a little bit. On the outside, he displayed brash arrogance. On the outside, he displayed brash arrogance with his chest puffed out as he waited to be called. I'm going to think about that. Inside, he was panicking. Inside, he was panicking. Although he knew he didn't do anything wrong, the Joint Chiefs were not happy. although he knew. So like words like this, and writer, we do them all the time. We do a lot of word stuffing because we're trying to paint pictures. But like words like this is just extra. So we don't actually need that. He knew he didn't do anything wrong. Now, things that I always like to ask myself as an editor is if I have more than one type of word in the same sentence, can I get rid of it or can I minimize it? He has he and he here. He knew he didn't do anything wrong, but once again, he knew. So the question I ask myself is, we are already in the character's POV. We're already in his mind. So why do we need to be told that he knew? We know it, but as writers, when we're writing it, we're trying to formulate it, and this happens a lot. I forgot what the term for this was. This was it's like a type of a description. Right? So he didn't do anything wrong. Before it was he knew he didn't do anything wrong, but we can just put he didn't do anything wrong. The Joint Chiefs were not happy with him. On the outside, he displayed brash arrogance. With his chest puffed out as he waited to be called. Oh, actually, let's go. Chest puffed out, waiting to be called. On the outside, he displayed brash arrogance with his chest puffed out, waiting to be called. Ooh, better, little better. Inside, he was panicking. He didn't do anything wrong, but let's go. He didn't do anything wrong, but the Joint Chiefs were not happy. But not happy. All right, but the Joint Chiefs were furious. But of course, this might affect the story a little bit because I'm like, okay, are the Joint Chiefs pissed off or are they just upset? I think knowing what I know of book one, they're probably very, very pissed off due to the events of book one, but I will not give any spoilers. He didn't do anything wrong, but the Joint Chiefs were furious. I think this creates more of an initial obstacle. Let's go with strong emotion. Let's go with very, very strong emotion here. Because this sets up a little bit more of an obstacle for our character, for Horatio. Let's see. Well, the ground battle had fallen on Bradley, who had already had his own meeting with them. The space battle fell on his shoulders. Well, the ground battle had fallen on Bradley, who had already had his own meeting with them. The space battle fell on his shoulders. Okay. So that needs fixing. So, well, the ground battle had fallen on Bradley. I think what I would recommend is because it probably has a name already. I think I would reference what the name of the battle was. Well, I mean, it's so early on; it might not have been given a name yet. He didn't do anything wrong, but the Joint Chiefs were furious. Well, the ground battle had fallen on Bradley, who had already had his own meeting with them. The space battle fell on his shoulders. Defeat. All right, I think this is what I'm gonna do. Well, Bradley's defeat had already been dealt with because I was like, all right, who already had his own meeting? I don't. Well, Bradley's defeat, because we already knew that Bradley was responsible for the ground. Well, Bradley's defeat. Well, Bradley's, and because we're in Horatio's head and he doesn't like him, I would say, well, Bradley's horrendous. Well, Bradley's horrendous defeat on the ground. Well, Bradley's horrendous defeat had already been dealt with. Had already been dealt with, might be ambiguous, had already been reported. Well, Bradley's horrendous defeat had already been dealt with. The space battle fell on his shoulders. Let's go failure. Bradley's horrendous failure had already been dealt with. The space battle fell on his shoulders. Well, Bradley's horrendous failure had already been dealt with. Let's go general. Well, general, Bradley's horrendous failure had already been dealt with. The space battle fell on his shoulders. And I think you could actually set up, well, General Bradley's horrendous failure had been dealt with for the loss of X lives. And I think you could put here X lives, how many lives were lost, because I think that creates an immediate, like, oh shit, that's a big thing. And he's very much pointing it out. Let's see, and it looks like we have some good recommendations in the chat. JL, you said had fallen, maybe look for some more active wording. It's a bit wordy. I agree with that. They want some more efficient language. WTC, he said Bradley had already faced the Joint Chiefs through the ground battle. It was his turn to face the mix of the space battle. That one's all right. I think WTC, that's a good recommendation, but it doesn't really touch upon Bradley's defeat. Something like Commander Bradley had already suffered during the ground battle debrief. Oh, debrief. That was what I was looking for. Commander Bradley had already suffered during the ground battle debrief. Now it was his turn to face the wrath. Well, General Bradley's horrendous failure had already been dealt with. All right, so General Bradley's horrendous failure had already been debriefed with the loss of X lives. Yeah, so actually I think General Bradley's horrendous failure had already been debriefed. That's so much better. All right, well, General Bradley's horrendous failure had already been debriefed because we know what a debrief is. The space battle fell on his shoulders. The space battle outcome, the space battle results fell on his shoulders. Because I think we want to know the space battle. Well, General Bradley's horrendous failure had already been debriefed. The space battle deaths fell on his shoulders. Yeah, I think I like that a little bit better. Planet side skirmish, WTC, that's not a bad. Well, General Bradley's horrendous failure had already been debriefed. Yeah, and I was like, I don't think we need that. Yeah, and then Slim, I saw you in here. Thanks for dropping in, by the way, my friend. We're doing an editing stream right now. If you want editing help or you need your story edited, we're going through different stories. This is the first one I'm trying, so once again, if you guys want to give me recommendations or things that you see that could be improved, definitely drop a comment. I'll try to keep up. Let's see. Hey, what's up, Eve? I see a bunch of guys in here. I think defeat. Well, General Bradley's horrendous failure. Yeah, horrendous defeat. I think defeat had already failure. Well, General Bradley's horrendous defeat had already been debriefed. I was like, technically horrendous isn't necessary. You could get the sentence a little cleaner, but I think this gives us insight into how Horatio feels about General Bradley. And I think that is important in the first. I think that's important to know. My guess is we're probably not really going to touch much on this in the first chapter right now. Had already been debriefed. The space battle deaths fell on his shoulders. The space battle deaths. There's a better word for deaths, but it'll come to me. So let's see. So Horatio waited impatiently in the marble hall of the Senate Rotunda at the capital of the HIO. It was just 2 weeks ago that the disaster at Tyrus had occurred. 2 weeks ago. It was just 2 weeks ago. And we could minimize this. 2 weeks ago. Only 2 weeks ago. Because once again, we always want to cut down on wordiness. Only 2 weeks ago. The disaster at Tyrus had occurred. And only, let's see, 2 weeks ago, we could probably even get rid of that. 2 weeks ago, the Tyrus disaster had occurred. 2 weeks ago, the Tyrus disaster occurred 2 weeks ago. Let's go. So actually, let's go that. The Tyrus disaster occurred only 2 weeks ago. And why are you doing? It's like, okay, because that makes sense. Thank you, Grammarly. I'm telling you guys, sometimes Grammarly gives you really stupid recommendations. It cracks me up sometimes. Okay. The Tyrus disaster occurred only 2 weeks ago, and he'd been recalled back to answer for it. On the outside, he displayed brash arrogance with his chest puffed out. On the outside, he displayed brash, chest puffed out. He tried to display, so chest puffed out. So I think we can do better with this one. Chest puffed out, he displayed a brash arrogance. Chest puffed out, he displayed, or let's try, he tried to display brash, and I think a brash arrogance. Waiting to be called. And now I think waiting will do better there. So chest puffed out, he tried to display a brash arrogance while waiting to be called. Now, usually I don't like trying, because don't try, just do. But I think this is an example based off his character where he's trying to do it. So I think it actually works well. Yeah, Sean, that's a good point. I mean, I think Grammarly can help with writing regardless of genre, but you just, once again, Grammarly is a tool, guys, and it's like all other tools that we use. You have to combine a tool with skill and knowledge, and if you rely purely on it, then you're going to make mistakes because it's not right. When I think about how often Grammarly helps me out, I think Grammarly gives me good recommendations like 30% of the time. 30% of the time are questionable, and then 30% of the time are very obviously wrong. Yeah, I think defeat works. I think defeat is good as well. I wanted to do something that was more than defeat because I know Horatio doesn't like Bradley, but I think for now defeat will work. JL, great editors think alike. Maybe start with the Tyrus disaster occurred. Jinx, read my mind. uh, Good recommendations. So Horatio waited impatiently in the marble hall of the Senate Rotunda at the capital of the HIO. The tires disaster occurred only 2 weeks ago, and he'd been recalled back to answer for it. Chest puffed out, he tried to display a brash arrogance while waiting to be called. I didn't use wall. Inside, he was panicking. So I don't think we need inside because we already know that panic comes from within, like, unless he's doing an action. Chest puffed out, he tried to display a brash arrogance while waiting to be called. Inside, he was panicking. Okay, so this is actually a really good takeaway. So technically, inside is an extra word, but I think stylistically, I think it has a nice flow. Chest puffed out, he tried to display a brash arrogance while waiting to be called. You could technically get away with he was panicking, but I think inside gives it a nicer flow. Inside, he was panicking, so I'm gonna let that pass. He didn't do anything wrong, but the Joint Chiefs were furious. He didn't do anything wrong, but the Joint Chiefs were furious. While General Bradley's horrendous defeat had already been debriefed, the spaced out battle deaths fell on his shoulders. While General Bradley's horrendous defeat had already been debriefed, the space battle deaths had already. Well, General Brad. I actually, you know what? I think we can make this 2 sentences because I think let's do this 2 thoughts. General Bradley's horrendous defeat had already been debriefed. Let's make this a simple sentence. So then we can end on Horatio himself because I don't think the point is on Bradley. So General Bradley's horrendous defeat had already been debriefed. We could give him an action. We could give him an action. He's trying to display arrogance. We could go back and forth on that. His General Bradley's horrendous defeat had already been debriefed. Now it was his turn. I don't like that. Horrendous defeat had already been debriefed. The space battle deaths would fall. Now you see by changing this sentence doesn't work as well with the rest of it. But the Joint Chiefs were furious. Inside he was panicking. He didn't do anything wrong, but the Joint Chiefs were furious. Let's see if we met. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to go look down and I want to see let's see if Bradley gets mentioned again in this excerpt. No. Okay, so this is a one-off moment. Bradley's not going to be mentioned again. So what I'm actually going to do is I think I might do something creative with this. So I'm going to take that sentence out. General Bradley's horrendous debrief. I'm going to make this its own thought because I think this will work better. General Bradley, he didn't do anything wrong, but the Joint Chiefs were furious. I think we can actually end that paragraph there. I think that's actually a stronger ending for that first paragraph. And I'm going to come back here. Nope, what did I do? The space battle deaths. So what was the point, right? Separating that. So let's give a moment here that he's feeling contempt for General Bradley, even though General Bradley's horrendous debrief had already been, even though General Bradley's horrendous defeat had already been debriefed, I could probably say something clever here. Even though General Bradley's horrendous defeat had already been debriefed, it was he had been let go with a slap on the wrist. There we go. We're going to create some tension. I think that's actually better. Even though General Bradley's horrendous defeat had already been debriefed, he had been let go with a slap on the wrist. Now, granted, I don't know what was actually the outcome. So if I do something that might affect us story-wise, I will leave a comment here. For for Calvin. Now, granted, Calvin, I know you're in the chat, but normally if I was editing this, then I'd be like, adjusted Bradley's outcome with the Joint Chiefs. Adjust if incorrect. Right, and then I would just leave that as a note there for the author. Even though General Bradley's horrendous defeat had already been debriefed, he had been let go with a slap on the wrist. Now, okay. And so, right, actually, let's finish this page first. In Horatio's mind, none of it was his fault. In Horatio's mind, none of it was his fault. Now, once again, like we already know that we're in his mind, so this just becomes extra word stuffing. So we would just get rid of this. None of it was his fault, right? This is clear. Now, I think because I really want to emphasize this, I might actually make it this own line. Even though General Bradley's horrendous defeat had already been debriefed, he had been let go with a slap of the wrist. Horatio clenched, fists clenching, fists clenching, or fists clenched. Horatio fist clenched. Horatio stopped. Horatio paused. Because he's waiting, so he's not walking. No, let's not do that. Let's keep none of it was his fault. All right, so we're gonna go there. I was like, I could come up with something clever, but I'll leave it like that for one moment. Aw, thank you so much, my friend. So, Sean, you make a really, really good point. You said, let's see, based off, you said the court martial's hearing, a debrief, then a court martial, and then a verdict. There sets any punishment, right? So then this begs the question of, has Bradley already been dealt with? So then what we would do, that's a really good call out. Then we would put, even though General Bradley's horrendous defeat had already been debriefed and dealt with, he had been let go with a slap on the wrist, right? So then we can just add that as part of it, like he's gone through the process. None of it was his fault. Let's see. And then we go into this second one. The ambushing of the fleet or the events that followed leading up to the explosion on the surface. All right, so let's do one more paragraph. So let me see where I'm at on time. All right, so it looks like Calvin, we've been at this for 30 minutes. All right, so as you can see, right, so the more that you get into it, the more recommendations, the more different types of styles that you can always recommend to help the author. Even though General Bradley's horrendous defeat had already been debriefed and dealt with, he had been let go with a slap on the wrist, right? So once again, if General Bradley had been let go, And if the point of that was basically General Bradley got away with it, which I think that's the intent. I think the intent is because we know I know Bradley's character, and I think Bradley's probably I feel like Bradley's probably not going to get in trouble. So that's why I feel like he's probably being let go. But once again, because it potentially might adjust the outcome, we leave it here for the author to make that decision. Even though Bradley's turns to had already been debriefed and dealt with, he had been let go with a slap of the wrist. There we go. And then we can set up here. Horatio gritted his teeth. Now I can go. So clenching his fists, Horatio gritted his teeth. None of it was his fault. Exclamation mark is a little extra. Clenching his fist, Horatio gritted his teeth. None of it was his fault. And now I think because we're adding this, I think I would actually add this back in here. Clenching his fist, Horatio gritted his teeth. None of it was his fault. The ambushing of the fleet or the events that followed leading up to the explosion on the surface. Let's see. So, clenching his fist, Horatio gritted his teeth. None of it was his fault. The ambushing of the fleet or the events that followed leading up to the explosion on the surface. After a diagnostic was run on the sensor net, they discovered a virus that disabled it and left them vulnerable to the attack. To compound the matter even further, an on-duty lieutenant had seen something strange in the system a few days prior and never alerted anyone to the potential problem. He made sure to make a mental note to deal with the idiot lieutenant. There was also the matter of the missing War Patrol command by Captain Phoenix. Although the attack happened days before he was supposed to return, the fact that he hadn't returned meant to him that Phoenix had been captured and the location of the staging point had been taken from him. Again, not his fault. None of this was his fault. Okay, so once again, this is another line edit. All right, and let's see what we got in the chat. We definitely have some really good recommendations from the chat. You guys are giving some really great recommendations. And then, let's see, stand outside, I think. Oh, Jill, that's another idea of doing internalizing his thoughts. I saw that as well. So this is another style recommendation. Could we go internal with Horatio italicized? None of this is my fault. That's absolutely an option. I think I would go a little further in the manuscript and kind of see how the author is handling internal thoughts before I do that, because then what I would ask myself is, then that becomes a stylistic thing that's done throughout the manuscript. But it's definitely an option. I think that'd be something to consider. So Sean, something really interesting also to keep in mind is, so that's absolutely how it would work in command. So everyone gets debriefed. These meetings with command determines if any courts martial need to be held, whom will be judged. So everyone would have been dealt with before they knew who got what punished. Absolutely right, in the real world. So I think because we're in a science fiction world, we don't know what the structure is of this type of command, right? So I think this is definitely something to think through. When I pull back on the decision, I would have to get farther into the story and then ask developmentally, okay, how come Bradley got the outcome first before he did? So, but that's definitely a really, really good point. Something great to bring up. So I can tell, so even going through this, I feel much better about this opening now. And now basically what this next paragraph is doing is this next paragraph is basically going into explaining what happened. Yeah, so when I go back through this and what I have now, Horatio waited impatiently in the marble hall of the Senate Rotunda at the capital of the HIO. The Tyrus disaster occurred only 2 weeks ago. He'd been recalled back to answer for it. Chest puffed out, he tried to display a brash arrogance while waiting to be called. Inside, he was panicking. He didn't do anything wrong, but the Joint Chiefs were furious. Even though General Bradley's horrendous defeat had already been debriefed and dealt with, he had been let go with a slap on the wrist. Clenching his fists, Horatio gritted his teeth. None of it was his fault. None of this, none of it, none of it was his fault. The ambushing of the fleet. All right, so I think for time intents and purposes, I'm going to move on to the next one, Calvin, so I can try to get to more people. But once again, really, really great work. So I know you said that this was an early draft of it. And as you can see, right, we just edited one page. That was just one page of editing. Editing is very time consuming. Editing is a very time consuming thing. Now, just from going through that page, I can already tell that the novel needs a line edit. It's specifically a line edit to fix sentence structure because there's a lot of run-ons and a lot of ways that we could tweak and improve the style. There might be some developmental opportunities for the story, but that's hard to diagnose in such a brief moment. I probably would have to go through about 5 to 10 pages to determine if there's a developmental opportunity or hearing the outline from the author. But I think just based on that excerpt, I would say this would definitely be a line edit, right? So imagine, right, that just took me one page. Now, of course, I'm doing it on a live stream and I'm working with you guys instead of just going into my zone. But yeah, editing's time intensive. So, but you guys gave some really, really great recommendations. I absolutely love that. I want you to keep throwing up those recommendations because the goal is for all of us to improve as writers. And I think everyone has some absolutely great ones. And once again, if you want to submit now. I will throw the link. I'll throw the link down for submissions. And let me throw up who we're going to edit next. Whiteseer, a phase bounty. So Whiteseer, we're going to hop into yours next. So I'll be hopping into yours in just a moment. We're going to be hopping into fantasy, going from sci-fi to fantasy. My love. All right. So Whiteseer, we're going to be hopping into yours in just a moment, my friend. And let me throw the link down in the chat for anyone who wants to submit. All right. So that way, regardless of what platform you're on, there you go. I just dropped that link in the chat, so you should be getting that on YouTube and Twitch. There we go. Awesome. So there we go. So I just dropped that link down in the chat for anybody who wants to submit. Excellent. And by the way, if you're enjoying the stream, follow and subscribe. I'm here every day with the WriteNow community. 600 consecutive writing streams and counting. I love the entire writing process. Ideation, writing, editing, revising, and everything in between. My goal is to help you with finishing your book, whether that's doing the critique streams, these editing streams, we do conferences, we do workshops, we do fiction contests, and so much more. So if you're wanting writing more motivation, or you just want to be involved with a community of writers of all genres and all backgrounds, then the WriteNow community is the place. So make sure to tap that follow or subscribe button and you'll be alerted when we go live. All right, my friends. So we're going to hop into the next one. And by the way, welcome. If you're just hopping into the stream, welcome to Story Edit Now, where I do live edits, I was about to say live critiques, where I do live edits for writers in the community. I'm a book editor. I offer the different types of editing, and I wanted to include you in the process and help you just become a better writer. So that way, when you're working on revising your story, you can pick up some more techniques and tools to help you cut down on words, make your things sound a little smoother, and then help you save money. because a lot of the time, editors charge on a per word rate. So if you turn in manuscripts with smaller word counts, you're going to be spending less money. So that is the goal of this. All right, my friends, let's hop into the next one. And once again, this is the first episode. I'm trying this format out. If you guys really like this type of like editing, where we're working together, just let me know. Drop a comment. This is whenever I try the first of a stream, it's always a trial and error to see what works, what doesn't work, and I'll continue to improve. So, but I see we're an hour and I should get to the next one. All right, my friends, thank you all for the recommendations. So we're going to hop into number 2. Calvin, I hope that helped. Really, really great work, by the way. Really, really, really great work. Once again, anybody who submits and brings it on screen, I want you to know that it takes a lot of courage to be able to put your stuff out there and then to take it through editing and a live stream experience and getting so much feedback from so many different people. Really great work. I hope you saw what we did on screen. I'll send that to you, and then, or you already have access to the Google Doc, so you should have access to it. And then also making sure you're paying attention to the comments. Some people give great recommendations. I take some of them, and others I just leave to the side because sometimes I'm like, okay, well I can touch on it, I can't, and it just depends on where I'm at. Right, Mast. And then once again, that was the second book of Calvin's, right? So we don't know how much we're missing out from book 1. Once again, it's one of those things to keep in mind. Awesome. So I almost wonder, guys, I kind of wonder in later books, how come there's not like a summary of like earlier books in the series? Like, when you're watching a TV show, or well, let's say you're watching like a new season of a TV show, and Netflix does this all the time, and they're like, what happened last time? I'm like, how come books don't do that? There's not like a summary of like what happened last time, like a 2-paragraph summary of book 1. I've always wondered that why that's not a thing with books. For me, especially, love reading long series, and then it takes years for the next book to come out. Okay, so let's hop back into it. We're gonna hop into yours now, Whiteseer, and drop that. All right. And now hopping into a phase bounty. So this is a romance. Let's see. We can make this a little bigger. Yeah, I think I like that. Okay. 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 So now let's pull into it. So now we're going to be changing. And let me put down, I probably should have done this with Calvin's, but for phase bounty, let's see what we got. So Suspensey with a romance subplot. This is a novel. Let's see. Maeve, a half-elven mercenary with a dangerous Fae patron, takes a deserter spy named Cassian, who always seems to slip away and steal her heart in the process. But when a political coup ignites and whispers of ancient magic stir beneath the surface, Maeve is drawn into a spiraling conflict between mortals and the Fae. Haunted by dreams of a throne not of this world, she must choose between a rogue who sees the good in her and a Fae lord who claims she was born to rule beside him. As the barrier between realms shatters and kingdoms fall, Maeve faces one impossible truth. Some queens are not chosen. They are forged. Yeah, that's a good blurb, actually. I like that. Nice work on the blurb. The blurb, Whiteseer. All right, so let's see what we see here. So we'll just go through the first page. I'm gonna make this a little smaller. I want to get a little bit more. All right, so a face full of straw. Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork being poked into her ribs and the musty reek of wet straw on her nose. You alive in there, miss? Croaked a voice, thick with pipe smoke and worry. Maeve groaned, her cheek damp with dew. Pressed in the coarse straw and head pounding like a drum, she rolled halfway over, lifting her head with the grace of a hungover cat. The old farmer looming over her held his pitchfork delicately, as if dealing with a scared animal. Found you lying down like this. Thought you may be dead, he said. All right, so we have a nice little setup. All right, so we have our main character. Now we know from the blurb, Maeve is our MC. All right, so let's see what we got here. So Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork being poked into her ribs. Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork being poked into her ribs, and the musty reek of wet straw in her nose. Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork being poked into her ribs, and the musty reek of wet straw in her nose. Now, as an editor, and this is always something to keep in mind, you can, of course, always improve. Like, there's always ways to improve every sentence. There always is. What the goal of the editor isn't to change what the author has. The goal of the editor is to improve what is there and pre-existing. So Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork being poked into her ribs and the musty reek of wet straw in her nose. I think I'm fine with this. I think I'm good. Now, as an opening sentence, we're setting up the MC, pitchfork, and the musty reek. I do like that you're opening with a sensory description. I do like that. Your Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork being poked into her ribs. You could improve it by saying Maeve jerked awake to a sharp pain. Maeve jerked awake to a sharp pain. Yeah, nah, I'm gonna leave that. I'm gonna leave that for now. I'm gonna let that stand. You alive in there, miss? Very clearly stylistic. So this feels like this is a character. You alive? We're going here. You alive in there, miss? So I think this works. I like that whoever this character is has a distinct way of speaking. Croaked a voice, thick with pipe smoke and worry. Good. That's a good open. Croaked a voice, thick with pipe smoke and worry. Sean, so you said you'd put gently in there. Otherwise, it implies the pitchfork went into her flesh. Awake to a pitchfork being poked. That's interesting, Sean. I think it could go either way because technically, poked implies that it's jerking her awake. But I could see how that could be taken either way. That's something interesting to consider. That's a good call, JL. Making it active, making it more active. Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork poking into her ribs. I think that's better. Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork poking into her ribs and the musty reek of wet straw in her nose. Now, this is something to consider. We know that if you smell something, it's coming from your nose. So this is an example where in her nose is extra. Now I was like, okay, stylistically, it doesn't do too much. So I remove it. Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork poking into her ribs and the musty reek of wet straw. So that's a little stronger. Definitely a little stronger. Poking. You could, if we don't want this to be ambiguous, we could change this. Prodding her. Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork, prodding her aside. Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork, poking and prodding her side. Prodding her aside. All right, let me catch up. Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork, gently poking into her ribs. I mean, gently would be an easy way. I think there's a better way than gently, but I think gently could work. Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork. You said tapping her side. Tapping doesn't sound tapping. Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork, prodding to a pitchfork, poking into her ribs, poking her. What if I go poking her aside? How does that? Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork, poking her aside. I don't like that. Poking. Yeah, I don't like her. Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork. Let's see if we go yours to a pitchfork, gently poking into her ribs. Yeah, I mean, a little more clear. I still think there's a better way, but I'm going to come back to it. Oh, nudging's not a bad one. Nudging's a good one. Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork, nudging. To pitchfork, nudging. Nudging her over. Jerked awake to a pitchfork, nudging her side. Nudging her chest. Nudging. Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork, nudging her side. Nudging. I don't know if I like nudging as much. I don't think it sounds as good for an opening one. Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork, gently poking her. And let's see. Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork, poking her gently. Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork poking at her cloak, and the musty reek poking at her. So, I mean, if we don't do it in the side, we could actually then not have to worry that it's piercing her. That's an interesting one. Why? Roused by the blunt tip of a pitchfork. The blunt tip of a pitchfork pressing at her side. Let's see how that sounds, actually. Maeve jerked awake by the blunt tip of a pitchfork pressing at her side. Maeve jerked awake by the blunt tip of a pitchfork pressing her aside. Maeve jerked awake. Maeve jerked awake by the blunt tip of a pitchfork pressing her side. Pressing her side. You know what? It's just the original one just still sounds better. That's the thing. It just sounds better. Okay. So I think, and especially because this is the first sentence, like you really want the first page to be strong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to this because I was like, I know there's a better way to frame it. I'm going to get into it because there's definitely some better ways. You alive in there, miss? Croaked a voice, thick with smoke. Or if there's something where I'm like, I'm not sure, I need to think about it, I might leave a comment. I was like, right? So then this is just something that I would consider. Let's see, alive in their mess, corrupt a voice, thick with pipe smoke and worry. This is a great line. Maeve groaned, her cheek damp with dew. Maeve groaned, her cheek damp with dew, pressed into the coarse straw, and head pounding like a drum. Her cheek damp with dew. Her cheek, little peculiar. She lifting her head with the grace. Her cheek damp with dew. Something about that feels peculiar. Maeve groaned, her cheek damp with dew, pressed in the so from sweat. Okay. I'm like, damp with dew is such a peculiar way of wording that. So Maeve groaned, sweat drenching her face. Maeve groaned, drenched in sweat. Granted, it might not be sweat. Maybe there's water on her, but I think that Maeve groaned, drenched in. Maeve groaned, face drenched in sweat, pressed into the coarse straw, and head pounding like it. Maeve groaned, pressed in the coarse straw, head pounding. So she's about to roll over. Let's go face drenched in sweat. Maeve, face drenched in sweat. She groaned. Face drenched in sweat. She groaned. Her head pounded. Her head pressed in the coarse straw. We haven't given straw yet. Face drenched in sweat, she groaned. I'm going to give this straw down here, pressed in the coarse straw. Her head, face drenched in sweat, she groaned. Her head pounded. Her head was pounding like a drum. Face drenched in sweat, she groaned. Her head was pounding like a drum. She rolled halfway over, lifting her head with the grace of a rolling halfway over a bale of straw. So we'll give the straw there. Rolling halfway over a bale of straw. Lifting her head, she lifted her head with the grace of a hungover cat. And I'm not sure if I like another prep there. So let's see. So face drenched in sweat, she groaned. Her head was pounding like a drum, rolling halfway over a bale of straw. And I was like, it might not be a bale, it might just be rolling halfway over a bale of straw. She lifted her head with the grace of a hungover cat. Now I was like, okay, so as an editor, I'm like, all right, I need to visualize a bale. I'm going to go look up online, bale of straw, so I can visualize. So if I ever need to visualize something, I'm just going to go pull up random images, right? Bale of straw. Okay. Can I have a character on a bale of straw? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on her size. Depends on how big it is. I mean, technically, if it's long, okay. Maybe, but my guess is she's probably in a barn. So rolling halfway over, let's go a mound of straw. Rolling halfway over a mound of straw, she lifted her head with the grace of a hungover cat. That's not a bad one, actually. I'm reading, Calvin. I read your comment. You cracked me up. Let's see. JL, she groaned through her pounding head. The coarse straw stuck to her face as she lifted her head. Face drenched in sweat, she groaned. Her head was pounding like a drum, rolling halfway over. Rolling halfway over, straw stuck to her face. Ooh, I like that. Rolling halfway over, straw stuck to her face. As. Now we don't need that. Rolling halfway over, straw stuck to her face as she lifted her head. Rolling halfway over, straw stuck to her face as she lifted her head with the grace of a hungover cat. Now, technically, this is an as, so technically this is a second one, but I can allow it because we're so early on here. Something to keep in mind, writers, and this is something that we all know, with sentence structure, the more, and it's just a takeaway, the more that you add to a sentence, the more ideas or things that you add into a single sentence, the more you chance the reader losing what's happening on the back end or the beginning of the sentence. So this is why with like run-on sentences, you don't do run-on sentences. Because A, it just doesn't sound right. And then B, if there's too many ideas in a sentence, stylistically it might not sound right. And then we pick up information in a certain way. This is the same with paragraph structure. You generally want your paragraphs to revolve around a single idea. Too much in one sentence, it gets cluttered, you might chance losing something. So sometimes you can do multiple things with a sentence, but you have to vary. All right. So the old farmer, looming over her, held his pitchfork delicately. Ooh, you know what, Cool. That was a good idea. Her head pounded like a drum. Much better. You're absolutely right. Her head pounded like a drum. Good call out, Imp. So you see, the more that we look into something, we always asking ourselves about psychic distance, right? We want to be able to get the reader generally as close to the character as possible. Sometimes we want to be intentional and we want them to be away because we want it to have more of a narrator type distance, but it really depends on where we're at with the character. We always want to get rid of passive language, and we always want to improve psychic distance when possible, while also adhering to what the writer's intent and what their attempt is. The old farmer, looming over her, held his pitchfork delicately. The old farmer, looming over her, held his pitchfork delicately, as if dealing with a scared animal. So, the old farmer, the old farmer, an old farmer, the old farmer looming over her held his pitchfork delicately. So because we haven't really set up the farmer yet, we've suggested them, so I think this would we'd want to go an old farmer loomed over her. An old farmer loomed over her, holding his holding the pitchfork delicately. An old farmer loomed over. An old farmer loomed loomed overhead. Old farmer loomed overhead, holding, an old farmer loomed over her, holding the pitchfork delicately. Over her, overhead. An old farmer loomed overhead, holding the pitchfork delicately, as if dealing with a scared animal. As if dealing with a scared animal. Okay. Let's see. So we basically, the author is basically wanting us to feel like she's being treated like an animal. Okay. Because this is the second animal reference. So with the Grace, we have a cat reference. Now we have an animal reference. So we're clearly in some type of farm. And that's very intentional, especially because we have a farmer. An old farmer loomed overhead, holding the pitchfork delicately. Now, of course, there's a couple of different ways. Like, yeah, I could always recommend to the writer, I'm like, if this farmer is going to be important, so I'm going to leave a comment here. This would be a developmental opportunity. If the farmer is an important character, let's set him up with a visual of how do we know that he is a farmer, right? But it's really going to be contingent on if he's an important character or not. Based on what I've read of your work, Wyatt, I think he does stick around for a few chapters. But because like we could just say an old farmer, or we could go an old man, straw hat strewn across straw hat clung to his head, doing like a whole like one sentence. I would do like a one sentence description. But if the farmer is an important character, let's set him up with a one sentence visual. One sentence visual description. But let's assume I know nothing about the story yet, so I'm just going to leave that here and we'll come back to it. Okay. Old farmer loomed overhead, holding the pitchfork delicately, as if dealing with a scared animal. Okay, I can let that. I'll let that pass. Found you lying face down like this. Found you lying face down like this. Extra word. Now you can sometimes get away with extra words in dialogue because dialogue is supposed to feel natural. And let's see, you don't want to imitate dialogue from real life exactly, but you want to make it feel like it's consistently inconsistent with the way people talk. But I think this is a moment where we can get rid of this. Found you lying face down. Now we have ya and yeah. So I would say I would stick to one. So that way it's consistent with his speech. How did he speak? Yeah, alive. Found you lying face down. Thought you may be dead. Now, both those in the same sentence, a little iffy. I don't know if I like two yes. Found you lying face down. Thought death must be about you. Found you lying face down. Thought you might be dead. Found you lying face down. Thought you might be dead. I think there's a better way for it. Interesting. By the way, welcome to the stream. Anybody who's just hopping in, we're just doing some editing. We're helping out writers in the community. Feel free to pull a seat, sit down, and drop a comment if you see any recommendations or any edits that work for you. Found you lying face down. Thought death must be. Found you lying face down. Thought. Trying to see if I can think of it without doing you again. Found you lying face down. Thought death might have taken you. He said. Found you lying face down. Thought you might be dead. Thought you may be dead. Okay. I'm going to leave it. I'm gonna leave and come back. So Maeve sat up slowly, rubbing grit from her eyes and chewing the moisture back into her mouth. Maeve sat up. So this is what I always ask myself with when we have ly adverbs. We always want to ask ourselves, is this necessary? Do we need to know that Maeve is sitting up slowly? I sometimes yes, sometimes no. I think we can actually get rid of this. Maeve sat up, and I think this still achieves the same effect. So I think we can cut that out on wordiness. And I'd say Maeve sat up, rubbing grit from her eyes and chewing the moisture back into her mouth. And chewing the moisture, how do you chew moisture back into your mouth? I'm like, this is an example where I'm like, how do you chew moisture into your mouth? I'm like, so I was like, rubbing grit, that makes sense. It's like the sleep. But how do you chew moisture back into your mouth? So this is actually an example where I would probably do Google. Can you chew moisture back into your mouth? I was like, I don't know. It's a good question. So quick Google, right? Yes, you can chew to stimulate saliva and add moisture to your mouth. It's a common and effective method for relieving a dry mouth. Okay, so I could see it. It's like dry mouth. It's just the wording then. Okay, so Maeve sat up, rubbing grit from her eyes and chewing the moisture, back into her mouth. Let's see. Her tunic lacing was unraveled, revealing more of her than modesty should allow. Okay, we're getting a character. Her tunic lacing was unraveled, revealing more of her than modesty should allow. All right, so this is definitely a bit of a narrator. We got a little psychic distance. We have a little bit of revealing more of her, a little bit of a POV. Her tunic lacing was unraveled, revealing more of her than modesty should allow. I actually really like this. Because you're letting it's obvious that she's sitting up, she's waking up, and she's realizing what state she is in after being prodded with a pitchfork by a random farmer. One of her boots was missing, and her favorite knife was not in its scabbard on her thigh. One boot, one of her boots, one boot was missing, and her favorite knife scabbard. One boot was missing, and her favorite knife was, and her one boot was missing, and her scabbard remained empty of her favorite knife. Remained void. Ooh, remained void. I wonder if void would work. Let's go void definition. Yeah, I think it could. One boot was missing, and her scabbard remained void of her favorite knife. One boot was missing, and her scabbard remained void of her favorite knife. One boot was missing, and her scabbard remained void. You could go empty as well if I don't want to get extra with that. And her scabbard remained empty, remained void of her favorite knife. And her scabbard remained empty of her favorite knife. Void. I kind of like void though. That gives it a vibe. And her scabbard remained void of her favorite knife. Now, the one thing I don't like is that I have two hers here in one sentence. I always try to get rid of more than one word in the same sentence, right? Because we want variety. Sometimes you can get away with it, but you want to try to minimize as much as possible. One boot was missing, and her scabbard remained void of her favorite knife. Void of. I wonder if she gives and her scabbard remained void of. Of the favorite knife. One boot was missing, and the scabbard. Let's go the. One boot was missing, and the scabbard remained void. One boot was missing, and the scabbard. I think hers important. One boot was missing, and her scabbard remained void of her favorite knife. Okay. She groaned again as the memories of the night before came into focus. She groaned. I was like, did she groan earlier? May have drifted awake, rolling away as her face lifted with a grace. She might have groaned, and I might have gotten rid of it. So she groaned. She groaned as the memories of the night before. She groaned as the previous night's memories, as the prior night's memories. Came back before it came into focus. She groaned as the prior night's memories hit her like a brick. As the prior night's memories came back, came back into focus. So we'll keep the author's wording. She groaned as the prior night's memories returned to her. She groaned as the prior night's memories returned. Flashed. Let's see. Yeah, she groaned as the prior night's memories returned. She groaned as the prior night's memories returned. Well, we know that she's just waking up. So we already know that she's just waking up. So like now you're basically saying that she's groaning because she's remembering what happened last night. I think we've set up that she's groggy. So I think she groaned. She groaned over the prior night's events. She groaned over the prior. She groaned recalling the prior night's events. She groaned. Recalling the prior night's events. That makes it interesting. Recalling the prior night's events. She groaned. Okay. Resurfaced is actually a good one. Resurfaced is recalling the prior night's event. She groaned. She groaned as the prior night's memories resurfaced. Flash. You know what, Imp? You know, a really good idea. Actually, I almost did Flashed as well. I almost did Flashed. 1, maybe 2 dozen drinks more than her tolerance allowed. I like that. But we still don't know yet why she doesn't remember. It could be drinking, but we're not sure yet. Flashed. Yeah, I almost went flashed. Recalling a prior night's events, she groaned. Because I think this is like a small moment. It's like I don't think I need to spend too much time on her recalling the events. Let's just get to the events. So I think it's better to keep this a shorter sentence for that reason. Right? Because we're about to we wanna once you say we're recalling the prior night's event she groaned, technically this is a foreshadow to okay, what happened the last night. Technically this is all a build up to what happened last night. Staring off in the distance, last night slowly trickled back into her mind. Now this is repetitive because we just set that up here. Staring off in the distance, last night slowly trickled back into her mind. So this actually isn't necessary because we already set up here that she's starting to recall last night's events. So this is actually stronger if we just do this. Recalling the prior night's events, she groaned. What had she done? So much stronger. So much stronger, right? So this lets us, she's obviously something bad happened last night, and now we're getting the interiority. What had she done? Great, much stronger. The farmer was still standing there, gawping. What the heck? What's gawping? Is gawping a word? I was like, once and guys, like I'm not a dictionary. I don't know. Sometimes writers have words, and I'm like, that's not a word. And then I go look it up. I'm like, yeah, I guess it's a word. Gawping is an interesting one. So I would have to look up here. Gawping definition. Because I think of gaping. I know gaping is a word, but let's see, gawping. Gawp. Stare openly in a stupid or rude manner. Informal British. Gotcha. Okay. So, okay, that makes more sense. So it is a word. Yeah, oh, thanks for that, White. Stop your gawping. He's from the UK, guys. And once again, guys, this is something really interesting to think about because there's a lot of times where there's going to be word adjustments based on which region of the world we are writing from, right? So absolutely, right? There's a lot of words and a lot of variations, especially between UK English and then US English, and that's all right. The question you want to ask yourself is, which type of audience are you writing this for? Are you writing this for a US audience? Or are you writing this for a UK audience or readership? If the goal is like, I'm going to write it for whoever for both, then it really gets to become your call of like, okay, well then stick one lane or the other, right? So if you're going to do British word choice, do all British word choice. If you're going to do US word choice, stick to all US. This is just one example, but this is something good to think about when there's like variances in certain words. Mm-hmm. Yep, it's absolute different spellings and different punctuation grammar rules between US and UK. There's also, I believe there's also different Amazon websites for the different markets as well. So you just want to be clear on which market that you're publishing for. Mm-hmm. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Thanks for that call out, JL. You know, Slim, this is a really interesting call out. You say, I think it's better to read the part of the story you're going to edit and then start editing so you can get a better understanding of the story and makes the editing a little bit easier. Editors will kind of go back and forth on this. If you get a story, so this is just a really interesting call out. If you are a writer and you're revising your story, absolutely. I absolutely recommend you need to read and then do your editing. If you are an editor, let's say you're consistently getting like 100,000 word project, you're not going to have time to read an entire story first and then edit, depending on your time. Editing a 100,000 word story is already going to take an exponential amount of time. You have to be effective with your editing as you're going through it. A lot of the times the text needs to speak for itself. Now, if there's something that you need to know, like let's say you're doing a developmental edit, you're going to take a little bit more time reading through the story because you have to fix the story problems. What I'll do when I do a developmental edit is I will go like a normal edit, go through it. But then if there's things when I get later on in the story, I'm like, that doesn't make sense. I will go back and revise. But every editor is a little different and they each have their own style. If you were going in at this with like as a line edit, then you wouldn't worry about going back and forth because you don't need to understand the story to fix the sentence structure. Same with a copy edit where your focus is a little bit more on the grammar side of it. But this is a really, really great call out. Doing it on the stream it probably would be easier if I read it beforehand, that just so I can give better recommendations. Oh man, I'm not used to editing on stream, so this is a fun learning experience. I had a great time with you guys. Awesome. So those of you just hopping into the stream, welcome. We're just getting in some editing work, some editing done, and I think we've gotten through. I think we've gone through about a page. All right, so I think what we're going to do, Whiteseer, so thank you so much for that. I think we've been at that for about 30 minutes. But let me just make sure. Kauffman will remember his timer next time. Yeah. All right. So we've been at it. Yeah. So we've been at phase bounty for a while. So we're gonna switch gears. We're gonna hop into our next story. So that way we can. I want to get to somebody else. But Whiteseer, really great work. Really, really strong open for fantasy. I feel like a lot of the things that we've done is we're doing a lot of style recommendations. Um, so far, without reading more of the story, my gut tells me that developmentally it's probably fine. I feel like developmentally it's probably in a good place. I feel like, and your style actually isn't half bad. So you have a lot of good you have a lot of good stylistic choices. Um, and a lot of fine tuning and tweaking. So I think based on now, this is of course the first chapter, but I think you could either go for a line edit for this one or a copy edit, depending on how much you like your style. If you feel really strongly about your style for a lot of these things, and you're like, hey, I feel pretty good about it. And sometimes writers do feel really strong on the type of style they want, right? So we made some changes and we made some adjustments throughout, and some of them tweaked and adjusted the style. We did a little bit more because it's a live stream format. But if you're like, you know what, I feel really good about my style, and I don't want like as much tweaking on a sentence by sentence structure, then we would just go a copy edit where we would fix the grammar, the punctuation, and make the pacing and the readability a little smoother. So definitely something to think about, but really great work. Definitely a really strong open, by the way, as well. Slim, you're like, hey, you're the expert. I don't know how much about editing. I just write whatever I get at the end is what I'm going with. Thanks so much for that, Slim. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to editing, like I don't consider myself an expert, guys. I've been writing my entire life. I went to school. I went to university for writing. Got a degree. I love writing. I've been around words, and I've done so much on my end. I always consider myself an enthusiast with everything that I do. I feel like I have a lot of skill that helps influence my experience and influence my expertise. But yeah, I'm just trying my best. But I really appreciate that. Awesome. All right. Well, really great work. So thank you so much for submitting so far. And by the way, if you're wanting to submit, the link for the submission process, if you want to submit for editing, let me throw that up. This down in the chat again. So yeah. And gratitude, I also think experts are a little overrated. I'm personally of the mindset that we're students. We're students throughout all of life because I feel like I'm always going to be learning. I don't feel like I'll ever be a master at it. I feel like if I was a master, like I feel like a master is somebody who's like doesn't they've like learned everything. But I feel like I always want to be learning. And especially with writing, because writing is such a creative process. Yeah. So there's the submission link. I just dropped it down in the chat for anybody who wants to submit for editing feedback and editing support. Submit now. If you're just hopping into the stream, welcome to Story Edit Now. This is the first of a specialty live stream that I'm trying out with the community to help writers getting their stuff edited, and then also to help teach you how to be a better self-editor. So when you're working on your story, you can improve how you go about revising stuff. You can also cut down on word choice, so that way when you submit to an editor, you'll be able to spend less money by having smaller word counts. Since 9 times out of 10, editors charge on a per word count. There you go. Awesome. So definitely, if you guys are enjoying the stream, also tap that like button. Help us show the algorithm that writing streams are cool. All right, so we're going to hop into the next one. Let's see what we got. And once again, this is, like I said, this is the first one. So we're kind of testing out what works. And as you can see, I mean, both the first two submissions we've done, we got through, what, about a page and a half? Because, like, editing takes time. Now, if I was doing this off the live stream, I'd probably be going about 2 to 3 times as fast. But I'm slowing down the process because I want you to see what it looks like. And especially that other viewers are offering different recommendations. You always have to keep in mind, part of editing, part of writing is so subjective. There's some things with editing, like a lot of grammar rules, punctuation rules, like, for instance, we all know that dialogue has to have a punctuation mark at the end, right? Whether it's a period, an exclamation mark, whatever. That is black and white, right? You can't not have your sentences with no punctuation at the end. Other things like recommendations, like you saw some of the things we did stylistically, half of those were suggestions. Half of those were subjective suggestions based on what the author wrote to improve their style. So I feel like this was definitely a little bit more of we were giving it a little bit more of a line edit. Hey, what's up, Marcelo? Welcome. Like, since I'm writing a graphic novel script, wonder how editing would work for that. So, Marcel, that's a really great call out. Even though you're working on a graphic novel, the script part of it would still be treated the same exact way. The difference, if you're working on a graphic novel, you're basically going to have probably one document. Sometimes graphic novelists kind of do this a little differently, but you're going to have a document where you might have one document that has all the images and the boxes and what's going to go on each page, and then a document that has the script or that has the wording or the story itself, right? Sometimes graphic artists will combine it. They'll have, like, all right, sequence page 1. This is what I see in this box. Here's the dialogue, or here's what they say. Box 2, here's what they say. Box 3, here's what they say. You're still taking it through the same editing process. It's just the difference is that we're getting the visuals as well. And that storytelling, the visuals, and the words have to easily support each other, because we have to think about our readers. Somebody who's going to a graphic novel wants a different type of reading experience than someone who is going to a novel. Same thing as somebody who is going to go watch a television show or watch a movie. It's a different type of experience, and we have to adhere to whoever the end consumer is. So really, really great work. But definitely, you're definitely welcome to submit, Marcel. I could do a graphic novel as well. Okay, so let's hop into it. So, Whiteseer, once again, thank you so much for submitting, my friend. I hope that helped. Definitely hope that helped out. And let's go into our next one. And it looks like we got Emily. So, Emily, I got you on deck here. Let's see, Emily Cuevas. A Fateful Reunion. This is a mystery. Ooh, we're mixing up. We got another genre. Always love when we get different genres, because I want you to see that genre, regardless of genre conventions, like we can set genre conventions aside for a second. Storytelling at its core doesn't change. You still need to have believable characters. You still have to have a believable world. Your plot still has to make sense, and you still have to be engaging and make your reader or your viewer care. So regardless of genre conventions, all those things still stay true. Now, what changes, right, between like a fantasy and a romance is the reader expectations when it comes to the genre elements. So, excellent. So we're going to hop into Emily's story now. All right, and let me pull Emily up on screen and see what we got. All right, let's see, what do we got here? So we're going to bring up the font a little bit, and we're double spaced. Good. Let's just bring this at 20 and see what we got. Okay. All right, so we are double space, and I think I'm good. I want to make sure you guys can see it clearly enough. Okay, so next one we got Emily's. And so the author is Emily Cuevas. This is called Fateful Reunion. This is a mystery. And then the description is this is a novel. Let's see. So Ethan and Olivia discover that the true test of their connection lies in overcoming the obstacles that threaten to tear them apart. Fateful Reunion is a gripping tale of love, redemption, and the unbreakable bonds that defy the odds in a world where the line between right and wrong is blurred. All right. So it looks like it's like a mystery. I'm kind of getting a little bit of a love story vibe from it. So maybe mystery romance, but just based off the blurb, that's what it felt. And let's see, line edit. Okay, so let's see what we got here. So it looks like we start off with a synopsis, and then we get chapter 1. I'm wondering if the synopsis is supposed to be I wonder if the synopsis is for our benefit, or if this is more like supposed to be a blurb. Let's see. So, in the bustling city of New York, where the line between right and wrong blurs, two childhood friends find themselves on opposite sides of the law. Ethan Reynolds, a charismatic and ambitious detective, is determined to clean up the city streets, while Olivia Parker, a brilliant but enigmatic lawyer, defends those accused of crimes. A chance encounter at a crime scene reunites Ethan and Olivia after years of separation. The spark between them is undeniable, but their differing allegiances threaten to extinguish the flame before it can fully ignite. As they navigate the complexities of their newfound connection, they become entangled in a web of corruption, deceit, and dangerous secrets. Okay, so my guess is this is the blurb. And then, drawn together by an unspoken understanding of each other's pasts, Ethan and Olivia must confront the choices that led them down divergent paths. The city's underworld holds the key to a long-buried mystery that ties their fates together, forcing them to question everything they thought they knew about justice, loyalty, and the enduring power of love. As they dig deeper into the shadows, risking their careers and lives, Ethan and Olivia discover that the true test of their connection lies in overcoming the obstacles that threaten to tear them apart. Fateful Reunion is a gripping tale of love, redemption, and the unbreakable bonds that defy the odds in a world where the line between right and wrong is blurred. Okay, so this is definitely the blurb. Little lengthy-ish, but let's see. For all intents and purposes, let's start with the narrative. So let's go into the chapter itself, because I think that's going to help the most here. I've done a blurb workshop before. If you're here in the chat and if you want me to do another blurb workshop for book blurbs, drop a comment. Just say drop blurb in the chat. If you want me to do another workshop with another blurb workshop, let me know. We did one last year and it was super popular. Or if you kind of prefer this where we're getting into the text itself, we'll do more of these. So just drop in the chat, write blurb if you want a blurb workshop. And I'll queue it up in the future. Okay, so let me see what we have here. Chapter 1, Ethan. Once there, let's see, once they're in New York, there is a man named Ethan Reynolds. He is a charismatic and ambitious detective in New York City. He is very determined to solve and to clean up as many as possible as he can in the city streets. Anyway, he is racing against time. The reason why is because he'll be solving a high-profile case. A high-profile case that he'll be solving involves a lot of stolen, priceless artworks. He is the lead detective in this case. There is so much artwork that has been stolen across the city in a lot of different art galleries. In one of the art galleries in New York City, there's a lot of art stolen inside of the gallery. One art piece is stolen into the crime scene that everyone is worried about. Also, there's a lot of art stolen in that specific art gallery. It is about sailboat painting. The sailboat painting is very colorful. The reason is because it has many different colors that are very unique. The colors of the sailboat paint a variety of different colors, such as red, blue, yellow, and so much more. Okay, so we're definitely, so essentially what we're doing is we're doing setup. So we have a very removed narrator setup. So let's start here. Once there, all right, so something tells me that we're probably going to be doing more, general fixing here. Once in New York City, there is a man named he is. So we're doing a lot of present tense. I'm wondering if this is supposed to be in present tense. Interesting. So what it is what we're seeing right now is I'm seeing a lot of present tense. And then once we get into the narrative, we go past tense. In an instance like this, I always like to ask the author, are they wanting the story to be in present tense or are they wanting it to be in past tense? You can do either, but you generally don't want to combine them because it can confuse the reader. Now there's of course examples, right? Like if you're talking about like, let's say you're writing your story in present tense and you're talking about a memory in the past. That's of course going to be in past tense. There's examples and there's exceptions for past. There's exceptions for mixing them, but generally you want to pick a lane if you're doing one like for like 80% of the novel. So, but based on this, I mean, the first page feels like it's in present. So, okay, so my guess is the author probably wants it to be in present tense. I think the author's aiming for present tense. So let's keep it in present. But normally I would ask the author in this instance. Once in New York, New York, and we're basically trying to start off with like almost like a fairy tale vibe. It feels like in New York City. In New York City, there's a man. Yeah. In New York City, there is a man named Ethan Reynolds. Now, technically, this is repetitive, but the author is doing this intentionally because they want that repetition. In New York City, there is a man named Ethan Reynolds. He is a charismatic and ambitious detective in New York City. Now, New York City is repetitive. We've already set that up. So you want to ask yourselves, like, we want to get rid of repetition. He is charismatic. He is a charismatic and ambitious detective. He is very determined, so we don't need very. He is determined to solve and clean up as many as possible as he can in the city streets. He is determined to solve and clean up as many as possible. Now, that's a little vague. He is determined to solve and clean up crime in the streets of Yonkers. He is determined to solve and clean up crime in the streets. He is determined to solve and clean up crime in the streets. In New York City, there is a man named Ethan Reynolds. He is a charismatic and ambitious detective. He is determined to solve and clean up crime. Now we're going into, he's about to go race time for a high profile case. He is determined to solve and clean up crime wherever that leads him. Wherever it leads him. Wherever it may lead. Ooh, we're going to do that as an ellipses. What an interesting way to start it. So I think I like this a little better. He is determined to solve and clean up crime wherever it may lead. That's interesting. So what you've done is I've added a little bit of a flair here with punctuation. Now with our non-traditional punctuation, ellipses, parentheses, semicolons, and the other ones, we don't want to use them too heavily. We want to be able to use them sporadically because it draws the reader's attention to them. Because this is a start to it, I think I'm going to use this as a vibe because I don't think I've seen Emily using any other examples of ellipses. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to do that. We'll see how this goes. And right, so this is really interesting, Mast. You're like, as a reader, I feel like I'm being told things and not immersed in what is going on. So the reason it might feel like that is because what the writer's doing is they're setting it up. They're setting up the setting of it, and we're not being pulled into it. Right? He is. We're not feeling any actions or any things of our characters. We're being told this from a very far, what's called a far psychic distance from the character, right? So as a reader, it might be difficult for me to connect with the character because it feels so far removed. Now, what I'm going to do is we're going to continue through this and see, because based off what I read earlier, it sounds like this early buildup is probably a lot of the same. But let's see what we see here. Anyway, he is racing against time. So we actually don't need the anyway. We can just put here, he is racing against time. He is racing against time. Now, we don't need the reason why, so this is just word stuffing, is because he'll be solving. Now since he will be solving, no, the question I'm asking is they're setting up what he's about to solve. There's a lot of art. But it looks like he is currently solving it. So let's do it in the present. He's solving. Actually, let's say he is tasked to solve. He is tasked to solve a. He is tasked. We don't need is twice. He's tasked to solve a high-profile art case. He'll be solving involves a lot of stolen priceless art. Countless stolen priceless artwork is missing. So let's see, countless priceless artwork is missing. And that's it. Priceless artwork is missing. Okay, now what I would do here is then for the author, I would be like, okay, so I would elaborate here and I would leave us a comment and be like, so give us a few examples. Give us a few examples of artwork that is missing. Right. Now, of course, the narrative is probably going to go into this, but I think this would be a good moment to foreshadow and pull us a little deeper into it. Now, something that I can already tell, so as I'm going through this, I'm in the second paragraph, I can tell that there's probably more, this is going to be more of a developmental edit. So because this is going to be more of a developmental edit, let me see here. Because I'm not sure if I want to make sure that the story is clear. because one of my questions I'm going to ask myself is why. So I understand why you're setting up here. This makes sense. But I'm wondering, why are we being told about what's about to happen? Why not just get into the narrative? And I get it. You're what the author's doing is they're wanting to set up a vibe, like this is almost like a detective noir type vibe. Like this happens in the streets of this city. This crime never goes unpunished. One day, a detective is about to deal with a crime that's going to change everything, right? Or something to that extent. And I can tell that's the vibe that they're trying to set up here. But what's happening is I think we're being given all this extra information, and it might actually be more impactful for us to just get straight into the narrative. And let's say he's the lead detective. All right, so you see what I'm doing across countless art galleries, across countless art galleries throughout the city, right? So essentially what we've done is we've just done some combining. Priceless artwork is missing from countless art galleries throughout the city. So let's see. And then we go here, and then this it looks like we're setting up what's happening in one of the art galleries. Okay, so essentially what the author's doing is they're setting us up with the specific gallery that's been stolen, and then we're going to be set up with a description of Ethan. I am almost going to ask myself, I think that I want to move this dialogue a little sooner. I think what I want to do is, I think this is what I would recommend. So I'm like, let's pull the reader into the story immediately. So I'd be like, let's move. So because we're getting the description of the paintings here, I don't, so I'm just going to copy this. We're actually going to move this up a little sooner, because what's happening right now is this next paragraph is describing this art piece, but we're getting it in the dialogue here. So I'm actually going to move the dialogue up because it's actually going to help pull us into the present and bring us a little closer into the character journey. And this is present. So this is right now. Ethan asked is past tense. And if we're in the present, I would actually do this. So this is one of the paintings that got stolen. So this is one of the paintings that got stolen. In dialogue, we can get away with past tense because this is something, because that's how people will speak. But if we can adjust it to present, so this is one of the paintings. So this is one of the stolen paintings. We could still make it present tense. It's easy. Ethan asks. And now, so that way we can give a little bit of a build up. I'd be like, let's give, or actually, we put Ethan, but a man named Ethan Reynolds. there is a man named Ethan Reynolds. I almost want to call him detective, but he's been set up as Ethan Reynolds, so we'll leave that for now. This makes me ask myself, can he be called Detective Reynolds? So, oh, what did I just do? I'm going to leave a comment here. Can he be referred to as Detective Reynolds? Because I think that might give it a bit more of a vibe, give him a little bit more as of a personality. So this is one of the stolen paintings. Ethan asks, let's see, and clearly he's inside an art exhibit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give him some type of action because I want to give him a very unique vibe. So this is one of the stolen paint. And as if we don't need this, I think we go, this is one of the stolen paintings. Ethan asks, flicking. And we don't know enough about Ethan's. So he's charismatic and ambitious. So we want to give him something to do that's going to be ambitious. Ethan, this is one of the stolen paintings. Ethan asks, clicking a picture. Ethan asks, measuring, this is one of the stolen paintings. Ethan asks, measuring the width. Measuring the width of the painting's depth. So this is one of the stolen paintings. Ethan asks, precariously. I don't have anything right now. I'm going to come back to that. So let's just go. This is one of the stolen paintings. Ethan asks. We could adjust this to the way he speaks. Ethan asks. Let's go. Not enthusiasm. Let's go. Intrigued. This is one of the stolen paintings. Ethan asks. Intrigued. And then, because we haven't set up who he's speaking to, the art exhibit, the snobby art exhibit director, replied with a sneer. The snobby art director replied with a sneer, one of them including the sailboat paintings. And we just gave the character a vibe. We have no clue. We have no clue who this character is. The snobby art exhibit director replied with a sneer. One of them including the sailboat paintings. One of them. And let's give that its own beat. One of them including the sailboat paintings. It is one of the kind in the art gallery. You could absolutely. So the snobby art exhibit director, let's say, what was their name? Stephen. As like the snobby art exhibit director, Stephen. Let's go Stephen Grimes. Like, kind of gives him that kind of like snobby. I don't really know what his character is. So when I add something that's more developmental, I will comment and be like, gave this character a little personality. Adjust if different. One of them, including the sailboat paintings, it is one of a kind. It is It is one of the kind in the art. It is one of a kind. Bub. Detective. One of them, including the sailboat paintings. It is one of a kind. Detective. Shoving let's go pressing Ethan aside. Let's do something that comes across as snobby. Pressing Ethan aside. No, let's leave that for now because we're going to go back into description. So I think this is going to help bring the reader a little closer. And I like that. I think this makes it a little stronger so that way I can feel like I'm in the head of the character that's happening. And now this paragraph here, in one of the art galleries in New York City, there's a lot of art stolen. So this was the original one that we had previously. One art piece stolen in the crime scene that everyone is worried about. Also, there's a lot of art stolen in that specific art gallery. It is a sailboat painting. So you see, we had actually already set up this in the beginning, so this just becomes repetitive. It is a sailboat painting. So we actually don't need the sailboat painting because we can actually describe this through dialogue, and it's going to make us feel closer to the character. And then let's see what we did. Who under, I don't know, we're investigating. So I think we can actually get close to the character by having the director talk about the colors. The colors of the sailboat paint a variety of different colors, such as red, blue, and yellow. Let's see, Ethan. Ethan leaned in to inspect the image. Ethan leaned over. Ethan leaned over the directors. Ethan leaned over the director's shoulder. And why? Why is that? All right. And then what we're doing is I'm adding a little bit of a dialogue here. So essentially what we're going to do is I'm going to let our art director describe what we had set up in this paragraph, right? The sailboat painting. Let's see. The reason is because it has many different colors that are very unique. Let's see. It has colors never before seen. It has colors never used. It has colors never used before. It has immaculate. Let's give him a little bit of like that snobby. It has immaculate color work never before, never used before. Red, never used before. And then the colors of the sailboat painted variety. Reds that are standing, pressing the detective aside again. Pressing the detective back again. He continues. Reds like the sun. Reds like a fine glass of wine. What's a red wine? Red wine. because one can be considered snobby. All right, let's go Merlot. Reds, like a fine glass of vintage Merlot. I was like, will that work? I was like, I could probably do a better description. Reds, like a vintage glass of Merlot. Reds, like the color of a son of the dawn. Reds, like the color of the dawn. Or yellows. Let's go yellows. Yellows, like the color of the dawn. Or reds, like yellows, like the color of the dawn. Reds, visceral and bloody. Reds, visceral. And I don't know why I keep thinking blood. I'm like, there's other reds. Reds, visceral and lifelike. Blues, as deep as the ocean. These are just a few examples. I feel like I could probably do better than this. The reds. The reds are visceral and lifelike. And the blues. Deep as the ocean. All right, so what we've done is we've given him a little bit of a personality. Press the detective back. Turning, he turns to the detective. He turns to the detective, looking down his nose and sniffs. All right, so I will do that. And now what we've done is we basically replaced this whole paragraph and we've done the same thing, right? So before, when we had in one of the art galleries in New York City, there's a lot of art stolen inside the gallery. One art piece is stolen in the crime scene that everyone is worried about. Also, there's a lot of art stolen in that specific art gallery. It is about sailboat painting. The sailboat painting is very colorful. The reason is because it has many different colors that are very unique. The colors of the sailboat paint a variety of different colors, such as red, blue, yellow, and so much more. Now, essentially what we've done is we've replaced this with dialogue because it's going to pull us deeper into the scene and let us be closer. Essentially what we want is we want the reader to feel like they're closer to the characters because that's how we're going to make them feel something. Now, because this is the beginning of the story, setting up is important. We've just minimized the setup a little bit because there was a little bit of repetition that was easily solvable. And now what I would do is I would get rid of this. And this was the next one. See the crime scene at one of the art galleries. That's wearing. And now we're basically going into a description of Ethan. Perfect. And then what I would do is Ethan glanced to his partner. Ethan glanced to his partner. Chuckling. Ethan glanced to his partner with a chuckle. Ethan glanced to his partner, hiding suppressing a laugh. Ethan glanced at his partner. I like two better. Ethan glanced to his partner, suppressing a laugh. Before returning his attention to the scene. And now, so what I've done is I've created an action, and now what we're going to do is we're going to give a description of Ethan. So now I tie it back in here. He came in to see the crime scene at one of the, Ethan. He came in to see the crime scene just hours before, because we already know we're at the art gallery. He came in to see the crime scene. Let's say he came in to see the crime scene hours earlier, but the director was nowhere to be seen. All right, so Ethan glanced at his partner, suppressing a laugh before returning his attention to the scene. And now we're doing past tense because we're about to say what happened. He came in to see the crime scene hours before. The director was nowhere to be seen. Ethan, actually, so this is kind of setting up for what had happened previously. Actually, let's do that. Let's add this after. And now we're going to focus on Ethan suppressing a laugh before returning his attention to the scene. He adjusted his clothes. He adjusted his usual work clothes. And now we'll put here, right? So what we're doing is we're using action. He adjusted his usual work clothes. Now, we actually already described him as charismatic and ambitious, so having it here again makes it feel a little repetitive, like we're trying to tell the reader. So I'm actually just going to get rid of that. He adjusted his usual work clothes. They could be described. They are his a black long sleeve shirt. So he adjusted his usual work clothes. A black long sleeve shirt with black pants. With black pants and a very nice belt. And a very nice belt. And then in the center of his black pants, he has a silver oval that has the symbol of the eagle. In the center of his black pants, he has a silver oval that has a symbol of the eagle. In the center of his black, I'm not actually, so I wonder if this is supposed to be in the belt, or if he has a silver oval. I wonder, he also, since he has a police cop. So I'm not actually sure what this is because I'm looking at this. So a black long sleeve shirt with black pants and a very nice belt. He adjusted his usual work clothes. A black long sleeve shirt with black pants and a very nice belt. In the center of his black pants, a silver oval has the symbol of an eagle. So I'm just not sure what this is. It might be the badge, but I'm unclear. So this is a moment where I would say clarify what this is, because I'm just not sure. Also, he has to bring a police badge since he is a police cop in New York. So by saying, once we say that there's a police badge, it's obvious that he's a cop. So then the rest of the sentence becomes a little extra. So what we would do is we would say he is a police badge hangs off his belt. Hangs from his belt. From his belt loop. All right, so then we're getting that Steven is actually a co-worker, not the museum guy, so we'll fix that. Ethan asked his partner, a police badge hangs from his belt. His partner, Stephen Richmond, His coworker. I think partner is probably a little. We could get away with partner as well since he's a police. His partner, Stephen Richmond, is a good friend. His partner, Stephen Richmond, is a good friend. Is there we go. Is a good friend and has been for. Is a good friend and has been for some time. And has been for, let's just say, for years. His partner, Stephen Richmond, is a good friend and has been for years. Okay. So, let's see. He turns to the detective, looking down his nose and sneers. Ethan glanced to his partner, suppressing a laugh before returning his attention to the scene. He adjusts his usual work clothes, a black long-sleeve shirt with black pants and a very nice belt. In the center of his black pants, a silver oval has the symbol of an eagle. Is a good, let's go, is a good long time. Is a good long time friend. And then we're adding, they came in to see the crime scene hours earlier, but the director was nowhere to be seen. Yeah. They arrived at the crime scene hours earlier, but the director was nowhere to be seen. So now we're doing this. So what we've done, let's see. So, and then we also need to fix this. So this was, so it sounds like Steven's his friend, not the art director. So we'll just go the snobby art exhibit director. Since it sounds like Stephen was a different character. Stephen Richmond, Ethan Nasty, I don't know, but we are investigating this robbery as soon as we can. Everything's going to be fine. Okay. So what we've done is that we've now added a whole new character. When really it was basically them talking to each other as partners. And for all we know, like they get into this description in this next scene. So what I would do with this, I would say added, gives a few examples of artwork. I would adjust this, added a character here, the art director, to better pull the reader into this moment instead of relying on narration. And then since this character wasn't a character, we could just have this character walk away. He turns to the detective, looking down to his nose and sniffs before walking away. There we go. Now we've gotten him out of the scene. Ethan glances to his partner, suppressing a laugh before returning his attention to the scene. He adjusts his usual, yep. They arrived at the crime scene hours earlier, but the director was nowhere to be seen. And now we can get back into here, right? So we've done this setup, we've done this, and I think we've done a couple things, and then we would just tie off this dialogue. Stephen stands beside him. Let's see. Let's go wonder who took this painting, worth lots of money. Wonder who took this painting. Wonder who took this painting, worth a lot of money. Wonder this painting. Let's go wonder how much this painting was worth. Wonder how much this painting was worth. Ethan asked over his shoulder. And then we'll bring in the partner, Stephen. Stephen comes up beside him. And then we're just continuing the dialogue, right? And then because we've now clarified that it's Stephen and his Ethan, we don't need that speech tag. Stephen comes up beside him. Now we know it's Stephen. I don't know, but we are investigating this robbery as soon as we can. Everything is going to be fine. Everything will be fine. Ethan. We already know that they're talking to each other, so we don't need the name. Everything will be fine. We don't need the okay. And then we've set up the speech tag, so this just becomes unnecessary. We'll just let the dialogue speak for itself. All right, if you say so. And then we'll give Ethan an additional like action to just kind of touch on his character again. Ethan whistles. Ethan lets out a long-winded whistle. Thrusting his hands in his pockets. Thrusting both hands in his pockets. Hands in his pockets. Ethan lets out a long-winded whistle, thrusting both hands in his pockets. And then we're going back to the narration. It wasn't until afterwards. It wasn't until later. It wasn't until later. It wasn't until nighttime. It wasn't until the stroke of midnight when I went back to investigate this case alone. It wasn't until the stroke of midnight that I went back to investigate this case alone. So you see what I did? We did later, but I just added another layer of specificity to help add some foreshadowing and give it a little bit more of a foreshadow. Awesome. And I feel like I was able to get through that. Now, you see, this one I ended up doing the most adjusting for this. When I pull back and I look at it, I would say what we had previously, a lot of it was the narrator was telling me what was going on. So now I've made some adjustments to better serve the characters. Now, in a lot of instances, if I get a writer and there's like a lot of cleanup like this, I would say that it would probably be more of a closer to a developmental edit where I'd be like, okay, well, you know what? It feels like this part of the story needs to be cleaned. And then instead of doing all this work, what I would do is I would just highlight it and be like, let's give this a little bit more dialogue. And I could just highlight like, all right, this paragraph, it just doesn't feel like it's pulling me in. And then I would do some examples like this. So that way the writer can see and compare and contrast the difference. So now when I pull back on this piece, it reads, in New York City, there is a man named Ethan Reynolds. He is a charismatic and ambitious detective. He is determined to solve and clean up crime wherever it may lead. He is racing against time. He's tasked to solve a high-profile art case as the lead detective. Priceless artwork is missing from countless art galleries throughout the city. This is one of the stolen paintings, Ethan asks, intrigued. The snobby art exhibit director replies with a sneer. One of them, including the sailboat paintings. It is one of a kind, detective. Ethan leans over the director's shoulder. Why is that? It has immaculate colorwork, never used before. Pressing the detective back again, he continues. Yellows like the color of the dawn. The reds are visceral and lifelike, and the blues deep as the ocean. He turns to the detective, looking down his nose, and sniffs before walking away. Ethan glances to his partner, suppressing a laugh before turning his attention to the scene. He adjusts his usual work clothes, a black long-sleeve shirt with black pants and a very nice belt. In the center of his black pants, a silver oval has a symbol of an eagle. A police badge hangs from his belt loop. His partner, Stephen Richmond, is a good, longtime friend. They arrived at the crime scene hours earlier, but the director was nowhere to be seen. Wonder how much this painting was worth, Ethan asks over his shoulder. Stephen comes up beside him. I don't know, but we are investigating this robbery as soon as we can. Everything will be fine. All right, if you say so. Ethan lets out a long-winded whistle, thrusting both hands in his pockets. It wasn't until the stroke of midnight that I went back to investigate this case alone. Perfect. And then, right, so we could probably adjust this a little bit because this is changing from this changes from third POV to first POV. But this could be a stylistic choice, so I'd have to read further to see. Oh, awesome. Well, I feel like we definitely got in a really nice little editing session there. Ah, man. How did you feel about that one? We definitely got in some really good work for that one. All right, my friends. Well, we definitely got in some excellent editing. I was like, we got through about 3 pieces, but as you can see, we were able to get through about, I think we spent about 30 to 45 minutes on each piece. Um, yeah. So let me know, what did you like? What do you like about these types of editing streams? I would love to hear. This is, like I said, the first one of this style. So there's going to be some fine tuning and some tailoring down to figure out what's effective and what works. And of course, what you want to see, right? Because I'm doing these things to help you out, whether that's helping you get stuff edited or helping show you other ways of editing so you can do it yourself. So let me know the things you like, the things that stand out. Drop a comment. That is what we got for today. I'm going to call it an editing session, and we'll be back. If everyone enjoyed the stream, make sure to tap the like button, share it with a friend, subscribe, do all the things. If people like it, I'll do more of these. So, but I had a great time. I love going through the editing process with all of you. Y'all give me some really great thoughts and ideas. And I think, once again, like, making things like a collaborative experience helps us all grow as writers, which is super cool. Mary, that's a really good idea, actually. Mm-hmm. Right. And I mean, a lot of things, when you think about what editors are looking for, editors are generally looking to cut down on wordiness, make things more believable, right? Less wordy, more believable, and more descriptive, so that way it pulls the other reader in. So yeah, great call. Awesome. Well, I definitely appreciate you. Thank you all for joining today. Yeah, to keep I can definitely answer a question if it's on topic right now. Um, I feel like we were able to get a good amount of questions in. Otherwise, Takipa, what I recommend, if you have a question that's not editing related, I would recommend go hop in the Discord and throw up the question over in our Discord. It's linked down in the YouTube description, and that's actually a really great way to post questions, whether to me or to the community in general. And you can always at me in the Discord. I always think that's always a really good strategy. Um, but yeah, everyone, I really appreciate you. Today was an absolutely great stream. We had some other, I know there was more of you who had editing submissions. I'm going to kind of take a step back and think about, I'll review how this stream went. And I'll let you know if I end up taking those submissions for the next stream, if I end up repeating this. So yeah, thank you all so much. That is all that I got for you today. I'll be back tomorrow with another daily writing stream. It's going to be early. We're going to do an early one because tomorrow is actually our channel members critique group, Critique Right Now. So if you want feedback on your writing and you're like, hey, maybe you're needing like alpha reading feedback or you're needing general help with it, come join our critique group. It's going to be tomorrow. We're doing it a little earlier, 1 Pacific, 2, 3, 4 p.m. Eastern. This is our monthly critique group where we come together with other writers in the community. We read our stuff out loud, and then everyone gives feedback. This is a closed, private group. It's not a live stream. So this is a really great way if you're wanting help and feedback. To join the group, all you got to do is become a channel member. You can click that join button below the video if you want to learn more about the channel member experience, but this is really good if you're needing help with it. All right, my friends, thank you all so much for that. To keep it, what I would recommend then, if you have a question off topic, you can always shoot me an email as well. totally feel free to shoot me an email. My email's linked in the down in the description. It's also on the YouTube channel as well. So I'm always happy to help out. But I need to wrap up because I got things to do with our 3-hour stream. So thank you all so much for joining. I hope today brought you a lot of value. Tap that like button on your way out, and I'll catch you on the morrow. But unfortunately, that brings us to the end of the stream. Don't forget, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kauffman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Take care, writers. Stories are forever. I'm Kauffman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writers. It's time to write
now.
Sorry.
Right now, not right now, but right now. Read now, right now. Is that right?
Words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kauffman, and I'll catch you